Greetings and welcome each one of you once again for our morning devotion, our study in the book of Proverbs. We are in chapter 26, dealing with a particular group of people that the wise man is warning us about. Thus far, we have seen God's instructions about how we should deal with fools and lazy people. Such people who live their lives in such indifferent manner that the wise man is identifying what is the nature of these foolish people and how we can avoid them. The next section that we begin today in this chapter is about a wise man. And he identifies certain things that we as human beings should recognize and keep ourselves away from. A wise man is one who sees danger and keeps himself away from it. And especially one thing that we are called upon to watch and guard so carefully is our speech. Thus, by abuse, many have caused problems and even led into serious, sinful, and dangerous situations. And so we are called upon as wise people to avoid these sins in our speech, in our involvement with others, in our talk, in our interference with others' affairs. The portion of scripture for our study today are verses 17 to 19 of Proverbs 26. Proverbs 26, verses 17 to 19. Reading verse 17. The wisdom of not interfering in the dispute of others, one who passes by and meddles in a quarrel not his own, is like one who takes a dog by the ear. Here again, we see the wise man giving us valuable instructions. Verse 18 and 19. Like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death, is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I'm only joking. Here are two behaviors that we see of people who do not exercise wisdom in dealing and interfering with their neighbors. The first one is one who tries to meddle into the affairs of others, and sometimes so much so that he wants to interfere in even their quarrels. It is so natural for us to see human beings entering into problems, which may start with mere talk, which would intensify using stronger language, and soon abusive and cursings and such things leading to a fight. But here is a foolish person who wants to interfere even into others' conflicts. He cannot simply pass by when he sees a quarrel going. A quarrel takes place because of two parties who have misunderstandings, who cannot understand each other in their condition of enraged emotions. And so this is a tense situation. But here is a foolish person who passes by. He sees two groups of people or two individuals in a quarrel, But instead of passing by on his own, caring for his own work, he actually meddles into their strife, to which he has really no party. He is not part of it. He has nothing to do with it. Instead of going along his own way, minding his business, he inserts himself into their arguments, into their talk. And soon, of course, he cannot take sides with both groups. He may try, but finally he will end up taking side with one, and then he is into trouble. What a way of asking for trouble. When you see somebody in trouble, if you are able to diffuse their problem, somehow pour water on the hot arguments that are raging. But here is this person who joins and who tries to meddle into their affairs and then become party to what is happening. And by his uninvited intrusion, he finally has to bear the punishment. He may get battered, he may get bruised in the conflict. Unnecessary activity that he indulges himself and finally receives unnecessary punishment. You know, some people seem to have an irresistible desire to get involved in the disputes or in the affairs of others. They cannot keep to themselves. When there are two people quarreling, he thinks that this quarrel does not only belong to them, but he should also make it his own. What a way of thinking, what a way of asking trouble, and actually, we say, adding more fuel to the fire by his presence. Such a terrible situation that a foolish person will find himself. This person who tries to interfere or to meddle into somebody's business, the Hebrew word literally means to become excited. When a person, a foolish person, we call him because when he sees two people fighting or quarreling, looks like he resonates with them, his nerves become excited and his emotions run high, and you cannot hold him, but he wants to go and join in what is happening in the fight that is taking place before him. This is certainly a very unwanted, unwelcome behavior on the part of an individual. If he is wise, you would not throw your words meaninglessly at people who are in no normal thinking. They would not listen to you even if you speak to them wisdom. Wisdom is better spoken and received when things are normal. But when emotions are high and the temperature is hot, no words of wisdom, no reasoning can actually suffice and survive there. But here is this unwise person who tries to get involved in someone else's dispute without any good reason. He not really even being party to what's happening. Simply by his foolishness, he enters inside. And this kind of a behavior, in fact, even Jesus had warned in talking to those people who are not careful to deal with their fellow human beings. And so we see such people who cannot keep to themselves, but they only want to involve in others' matters. As a faithful child, as a faithful individual, you should do whatever it is possible to keep things out of trouble rather than indulging in such situations. So we should be rather careful that we do not unnecessarily burn our fingers when we really have no part in it. The wise man, a number of occasions in the book of Proverbs, has warned not to intrude into conflicts. In chapter 1 of Proverbs, verse 7, when they don't have to, we should not intrude into conflicts of others. It only can cause unpleasantness, and your presence would be of no benefit, especially one who speaks foolishly. He would only, instead of diffusing the problem, enhance it. It is important that we realize where our boundaries are. True freedom is when you're able to operate within an area that would not ever interfere into somebody else's affairs or business. Never to cross boundaries that you should set for your own operation, thus avoiding any crossing over into conflicts with others. The Bible talks about being peacemakers and not intensifiers of trouble. In Romans chapter 12, verse 18, the wise man, Apostle Paul, tells us, Romans 12:18, if possible, as so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. As much as possible, it's true you cannot be at peace with everyone in this world. There will be some who are not ready to accept your peace mission, perhaps. But as far as possible, the Apostle Paul tells us we should be peaceable with all people. Likewise, Apostle James tells us, but if you show partiality, you are committing sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. In interfering with somebody's affairs, suddenly you may take side with someone and show partiality to the other person. James says you are actually committing sin and you may be convicted by the law as one who has transgressed. Why interfere and cause trouble to yourself? In Proverbs, earlier we have seen in chapter 18, verse 13, if anyone gives an answer before he hears, it is his folly and shame. Until you completely hear out somebody's case, we should not try to take sides with others. In all fairness, you should hear out, and then is when you should be able to speak fairly. In Proverbs 18, verse 5, we read, it is not good to be partial to the wicked or to deprive the righteous of justice. But to a foolish person, partiality comes natural because he wants himself to be heard and his wisdom to be accepted. But thus, in so doing, he may even deprive the righteous of justice. The wise man has warned us earlier. And in Proverbs 22, verse 22, we read, do not rob the poor because he is poor, or crush the afflicted at the gate. You see somebody who is helpless, who is poor, and nobody to take his side. we should be careful never to deprive them of justice or trying to side with those who are crushing them down. We should always be cautious how and when to speak. Such behavior is likened to taking a dog by its 2 ears. This is a very interesting natural phenomenon. We need to know how to deal with and how to treat animals and how they would respect you. Sometimes you can hold the ears of some animals like cats, but dog you cannot. Very quickly the dog will turn around to bite you. This is certain to happen. So why cause trouble for yourself, and in so doing you are only causing harm and injury to yourself? What a way of dealing with a situation. Instead of being wise, you can even cause trouble for yourself by using or doing such foolish actions and recklessly trying to grab a dog by its ears. And thus you're only causing trouble for yourself, ensuring that the dog would be able to turn around and bite you. This imagery symbolizes the negative consequences that a foolish person who tries to meddle and interfere into somebody else's business will have to face. What a difficult situation that the wise man is warning us about. Let us be careful in our dealings, that we should never be in any way unprepared and to make such unintelligible moves that would leave us only into trouble. Don't expose yourself to needless danger simply trying to provoke a dog. You will have to receive trouble. Be prepared. As Christians, we are called upon to be willing to suffer, but don't cause trouble to yourself. You don't have to provoke a dog so that you can experience suffering. You can suffer when you are, for the sake of Jesus Christ, called upon, but never in a way to call for trouble, and then you become an unnecessary target and recipient. Such behavior is also likened to, in verse 18 and 19, a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death. Here now, the transition is going even to more severe consequences. You have a foolish person who interferes into others' quarrels and their others' business. But here is a madman. A madman is one who does not think much. He does not see the consequences. He is into deeper pit of foolishness where his senses don't work. And so this mad person, he throws around firebrands. That can cause a lot of danger if fire is not responsibly controlled. Yes, it can be serious in its consequences. Especially, we know in our village situations, if you have a haystack and a firebrand by chance falls on it, the whole haystack can burn, or a pile of wood can catch fire. But here is a mad person who throws firebrands and arrows, a picture of some individual who has access to some of such fierce warfare weapons, and then he behaves without thinking and misusing it. A firebrand or an arrow or a spear or a sword, these things are used in warfare. But if you give it into the hands of a mad person, what else will remain when he uses these? But this mad person, after doing his deed, finally comes out and says to his neighbor, "Oh, I was only joking." He cannot, either he is trying to display his foolishness or trying to absolve himself, to call no accusation, but he simply did something jokingly. This kind of a behavior of a mad person or a foolish person doing things without thinking and finally trying to put that away by saying it was only a cruel jest. Well, we see that such game or such kind of misuse and using such activity can be very dangerous. Destruction caused by speech is one thing, but destruction caused by actions is even more severe. The danger of foolish behavior and not able to control, especially in the use of firearms or a shooting arrow or a firebrand, these, even when children try to play around with this, we want them to be careful and never even let children lay their hands on them. But here is a mad person or a foolish person who behaves in this manner. This is a serious problem that we have to be careful of. Never let such mad people get access to any such weapons that they can easily abuse. And then as a result, they can cause untold damage and harm. And he cannot simply put away or try to say that he was only joking. Is a terrible situation. And so we, in seeing such kind of behavior and attitude, we need to not let such people continue in their foolishness. For these people are not accountable to anyone. They simply do things out of their madness. And you cannot, in the end, so easily brush away saying it was only a joke. Such people sometimes may even lie about what things they have done because of their insanity. You cannot, like in the modern context, give a gun into the hands of a foolish person and this fellow blindly shoots the rifle in a crowd. And what can happen? How serious the damage can be. And so a misuse or an abuse of anything which can be harmful placed into the hands of a foolish person seriously has great repercussions and danger. We are called upon certainly to avoid any such things. For Paul, talking about Christian warfare and Christian life. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 16, he says, in all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the fiery darts of the evil one. Such fiery darts are used in warfare, and the enemy of God's people who try to shoot this to harm God's people. But Paul is telling us, even if the enemy is shooting these fiery darts against us, we can take up the shield of faith. This Christian armor that Paul talks about, the various equipments that a soldier wears, like helmet and a breastplate, and having a sword and a belt and slippers and all of these shoes which can protect him. The shield of faith is what can help a soldier to face the arrows coming to him. Likewise, in a Christian, faith is important to keep ourselves safe and protected from the temptations of Satan, the enemy of God and man. Paul talking against such activity in Ephesians 4:26. In Ephesians chapter 4:26, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. Here is an angry person, a foolish person, a mad person who behaves in such ways, who talks foolishly, who is hasty to involve in the matters of others. Such kind of people will only see trouble always following them. Paul warning the Romans in chapter 12, verse 19. Romans chapter 12, verse 19, he says, beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. When somebody does anything wrong against you, it is so human that we want to retaliate and return back. Though we are weak sometimes, we think we can do many things. But he says, God says, leave it to God. Leave wrath to God, because it is God who will take care of it. I will repay the one who has harmed you, who has wronged you. As a Christian, we avoid any such interferences with those, especially who are not in their right mind, who are foolish, who are mad people, not in their right mind. We can avoid confrontations with such people and never even having to put them to judgment, for it is God who knows, and He's the one who would inflict upon them such punishments. And finally, in Galatians, the last verse we want to read for today, Paul talks about certain of these worldly things we should keep away from: idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, and divisions. Even in whatever condition we may be, but never to burst out in anger, for all of these can cause danger to somebody and make our own lives miserable. And we too are showing these worldly characters. Therefore, being God's children, this is something that is out of place for us. But rather, we are called upon to live in sanity and in control of our lives. Never to involve in the matters of others, interfering in their talk and argument or in their fighting. And then we are warned against not to cheaply engage in any such activities. If you try simply to say it was only joking, you trying to deceive your neighbor, these are situations that we as God's people are called upon certainly to act not the way of the world, but you cannot ever behave in such manners trying to show who God is and his character. Never to speak falsely, never to use our words irresponsibly, that we should always be guarding our speech. For James tells us how crucial it is for us in our spiritual maturity that we should follow the example of Jesus Christ. Jesus was always cautious, and even when he was accused, he would be silent. Certainly, silence is not to show weakness, but in a way it is a defense. We should be careful the way how we deal with one another, and never to behave in such manners that we may be found to be foolish, but rather being taught to avoid these kinds of situations of a foolish person or a mad person who interferes into others' affairs and who tries to use anything irresponsibly and trying to absolve it by saying it is simply a matter of joke. Let not such ways of thinking, such behavior ever cross our paths, but we should be more careful in our relationships, in our dealings, in our behavior, so that we can rightly represent who Jesus is to the world. Wonderful admonition for us in our spiritual life as well. God bless each one of us as we, in facing various situations, follow these instructions that the words of wisdom teaches us today. God bless you all and have a blessed day.